Well, first, thank you so much for hosting me today. I work at the Montreal Institute for Genocide and Human Rights Studies. We've been working for the past 12 years on prevention efforts, preventing mass atrocities. We've been working with Romeo Dallaire, who was in Rwanda during the genocide, and with my colleague, he wrote a book about how parliamentarians, not just governments, but also legislators, can be more active in terms of foreign policy. Because often we think that parliamentarians think, oh, I can only do things at home, but they can do a lot more, and they can have an effect on foreign policy. So when we saw what was happening in Ukraine, we thought, you know, we did nothing in 2014 when Vladimir Putin invaded Crimea, and that gave him a green light to invade Ukraine. We did nothing when he killed his army killed thousands of civilians in Syria. So now we're focused on basically finding out what exactly is happening in Ukraine in terms of war crimes, crimes against humanity, acts of genocide, and other mass atrocity crimes. So basically, we created back in June the Global Parliamentary Alliance Against Atrocity Crimes. It's a network of international parliamentarians from Canada, the European Union, Germany, France, the UK as well a little bit, even though they're not part of the EU now, but also experts experts in law, technology. So we've worked with Bellingcat as well. They do a lot of open source intelligence to find out first what kinds of crimes are being committed. So if you look at Ukraine, it's kind of a unique moment. If I can just make a list of all the things that are going on instead of just of justice response. 40 countries refer the situation in Ukraine to the ICC. Many governments made significant contributions to the ICC in terms of funding and investigators. So state cooperation has actually bolstered the ICC for once. Several states want a special tribunal or hybrid court that would investigate the Russian and Belarusian officials responsible for war crimes. National officers are investigating the atrocities committed against Ukrainians. Several cases have already proceeded through Ukraine's courts, and then at least 12 countries, including Germany, Spain, Canada, Sweden, France, and the UK, have opened their own investigations into atrocities committed in Ukraine. We've actually never seen this because often we cannot go on the ground before a war or genocide is over. So we have people now on the ground, including organizations like yours. This kind of evidence is important and is making its way through courts. So we held our first meeting in June. The first meeting kind of we want to discuss what do we want out of this network. So we had former Minister of Justice Erwin Calder. We had Romeo Dallaire. Last time we had Lloyd Axworthy as well. We have German MPs and French MPs. We have a Belgian one, Germans, and a lot of European MPs as well. And then we also have members from Human Rights Watch, the Reckoning Project, and they all talk about the different things that they're involved with in terms of war crimes and crimes against humanity. So during the second session, which was quite grim work like yours, is going through all the war crimes that are being committed, from rape to forcible transfer of children, which is an act of genocide if it becomes systematic, the destruction of homes and civilian infrastructure, like we've seen over the weekend. Obviously, torture, because we've seen a lot of torture chambers. Murder. Personally, I looked at the for my undergraduate and graduate research. I looked at Rwanda, and I've never seen such violence as used in Ukraine, even in Rwanda. So that tells you quite a bit. So the second meeting was also focused on, now that we're gathering a lot of evidence, what can we do with it? What do we need in terms of justice? We have the ICC, we have national tribunals. Can we create a special tribunal for this, an ad hoc tribunal? A lot of Ukrainian MPs we have spoken with demands of such a tribunal. a lot of Baltic states also want this, then how can we support these efforts? Also, can we accuse Russia or the state of the crime of aggression? The ICC lacks jurisdiction for the crime of aggression, so we would have to create something special. So these are the kinds of discussions that we're holding with parliamentarians and with lawyers. And then finally, how can we support the documentation of war crimes, including organizations like yours? And then we also looked into the universal jurisdiction, meaning I'm not a lawyer, but we have a lot of lawyers within our circle and within the network. So one avenue for justice that has received less attention is universal jurisdiction, which permits foreign states to prosecute alleged perpetrators of international crimes, even if the crimes were committed abroad. And so since we have a lot of refugees, Ukrainian refugees coming to Europe, we can talk to them. They can give us evidence of crimes that are being committed. So we're trying through a network to really support all the efforts and see what parliamentarians can do to support these efforts. What can they do at home? Can they push their governments to give more funding to justice, to military aid, to humanitarian aid? How can they also educate their own constituencies about why we need to keep supporting Ukraine and Ukrainians? And then in the long term, we are also hoping that what we learn from justice in Ukraine can really bolster the ICC again and the international system in terms of justice. So we want to both help Ukraine and then hopefully pursue new avenues for justice.